Why is it important for us to buy health insurance?
Over 80% of the Indians bear expenses which are out of pocket. So it could be a cat event, it could be catastrophic for you.
Hmm.
You could wipe out your life savings, you could slip into debt. Over half of Indians, in case they were to deal with an event which is to hospitalization, will slip into poverty.
If pollution goes up and more people do go to hospital, whether it's Delhi or not, the insurance premiums will
It will go
increase
up, it
for
will
that zone.
reflect. It will reflect for all insurance companies. The patient declare that
Hmm.
they have pre-existing conditions. I think a lot of people are fearful that in case they declare their habits, whether they smoke, whether they drink, whether what their real weight is, or if they have pre-existing condition, they'll be denied a policy. I think they're just being overly fearful.
The other big category of general insurance that people don't use as much as they should is home insurance.
2019, a morning of 14th August, my house burned down. So I was between policies.
Ooh.
House burned down in that period. I think it's a very, very important cover. I can say that as a customer. I mean, as a potential. I mean, I am a customer otherwise, but then when I needed it, I didn't have it, unfortunately.
We're currently at the 18% bracket, right? Which basically categorizes health insurance as a luxury item. Where do you stand on that argument? Do you believe that the GST should be brought down?
I think it should be. I think a lot of elective surgeries were postponed because it was COVID. None of them ever came back. Most of them didn't come back. So the fundamental question is, were the surgeries required in the first place?
You've also done a lot of work in diversity and inclusion. Why is this important?
I think as an organization, we have the responsibility. Um, the fact is, a lot of organizations don't really represent the communities fully,
Hmm.
right? I mean, the disabled are over 1% of India's population, but they are not by any stretch of imagination 1% of the workforce. Of course, the government does offer quotas to the differently able. The private sector really doesn't.
If you were to tell us 3 questions that we should ask while buying health insurance, what would those 3 questions be? Anup Rau, thank you so much for spending time with me. CEO and MD of Future Generali. And I'm so excited about having this conversation because we're going to talk about all of the questions that I wanted to ask about health insurance and a couple of other things. And I know that there are a lot of people who are watching who've also had questions about why health insurance functions the way it does in India. So the idea is to break it down in as simple terms as possible. So there will be times when I'll ask you to, no, I didn't understand that. Tell me that again. Okay.
Sure.
So I was looking at some research in my first question, and it said that health inflation in India is about 14%. So I understand that to be every year, the cost of the same treatment goes up 14% in India. And if our salaries are not going up at that same value, then over a period of time, just basic health treatment or hospitalization or a heart surgery is going to become completely unaffordable. From inside the health insurance sector, are you seeing this continue? Do you expect that healthcare or regular treatments in hospitals will continue to be this expensive or will grow at this rate?
First, thanks for having me over. Appreciate it. Thank you. So let me try and break this down, as you said.
Okay.
So what we really saw, and let me step back a little. What happened in 2020 was you had COVID. Couple of things happened then. Hospitals were overwhelmed with COVID patients, but otherwise they had no other stream of patients or income.
Right.
Right. So you had, and we saw two things which clearly happened. A lot of elective surgeries were postponed because it was COVID. None of them ever came back. Most of them didn't come back. So the fundamental question is, were the surgeries required in the first place? Or was it a very interventionist culture which was getting built into the medical system already? That's a question we need to ask ourselves, because there's enough and more data all insurance companies will give you to demonstrate that a lot of electives never came back. So was there over intervention, over enthusiasm for procedures at that point in time?
So you're saying that there's a possibility from this data to infer that hospitals were recommending surgeries that were not really necessary.
Probably not as necessary as maybe a very aggressive view towards taking or towards treatment.
Okay.
The second thing which happened during COVID, which everyone knows, is that the cost of other medical interventions and treatments went up.
Mm.
They went up 2 to 3 times in a lot of cases. The third thing is that the hospitals don't have any sense of oversight. I mean, in this country, I mean, currently, of course, I mean, there's a government which does intervene on behalf of the common man and on behalf of the citizen, but the way other institutions are regulated in India, industries are, you don't have that for hospitals.
We don't have a medical regulator or
We don't
somebody
have.
who's looking into hospitals. Yes.
So we have a regulator for real estate. We of
Yeah.
course have a regulator for insurance. You have a regulator for banks. You have a regulator for mutual funds, but currently none for hospitals. Um, so what's happened post COVID is that I think it has tested the tolerance for medical bills or expenses. I think that tolerance level has been established, and beyond that, I think, and post that, I think once found it convenient to increase rates at a particular rate. I don't think anyone can say no in case one requires treatment. One has to go to the hospital.
Mhm.
So yes, you're right about the 14% thing. The other thing which is driving that 14%, it's a bit of a chicken and egg, is that unfortunately the first questions hospitals ask patients, and then this again data comes from our patients who go to the hospitals, is that, are you insured?
Mm.
I mean, the first question should be that, what are your symptoms? What's wrong with you? But it is, are you insured?
And I remember reading about this many, many years ago, but you're saying it's still a problem where hospitals inflate the bill if they know there's an insurance cover that will cover it.
So I wouldn't say all hospitals,
Mm.
but then the fact is, you know how Pareto's work. I mean, it requires 5 or 10% of the hospitals to do it. They give everyone a bad name,
Yeah.
and as we say in actuary, I mean those tail events are what determine pricing for the rest of the honest customers. Unfortunately, that's what happens. The fact is, in the same hospital, for the same procedure, based on A, whether you're insured or not, and B, for how much you're insured, the cost of your bill varies. We've
Mm.
seen that happen,
Mm.
including for some reputed hospitals in some cities.
Why is it important for us to buy health insurance?
Simply because over 80% of the Indians bear expenses which are out of pocket.
Mm.
So it could be a cat event, it could be catastrophic for you.
Mm.
You could wipe out your life savings, you could slip into debt. Over half of Indians, in case they were to deal with an event which is to hospitalization, will slip into poverty. Into poverty as defined by the government, right? So you will slip into poverty. Now, the question you have to ask yourself is that, what kind of insurance do you need? So a lot of people, believe that, look, I have cover from my employer. For example, in case I'm salaried, I have 5-10 lakhs of cover. If you're salaried and in case your expense is about 6 months of income, you'll probably still manage. You'll say that fine. You don't have to go to the hospital, come out. But I think what people don't really cater for is those cat events which could happen, and they will happen sometime in your life.
Mm.
So a lot of people are insured, but they're underinsured phase. So the issue is that you might have a 5-10 lakh cover, but then we increasingly see bills in excess of once a year as well, especially if there are oncology treatments, or if there's a major accident, or God forbid, I mean, in case there's something happens when you're traveling overseas and you don't have travel insurance, for
Mm.
example. So I think you see massive bill amounts these days, and it's that cat event or that catastrophic event which could make it very difficult for you to recover financially.
So again, I've always understood insurance to be in three buckets to be adequately covered, right? So you have your hospitalization cover, then you have your critical illness cover that will cover a prolonged treatment. So for a critical illness cover pays out if you get diagnosed with a cancer or a kidney failure, something that requires a lot of treatment. And then there is your term health in case you pass away. You are saying right now in my first category that there are people who are receiving bills of 1 crore rupees from hospitals while they have insurance covers of 10 or 15 lakh rupees. That will run out on day one then.
Yes, absolutely.
So then how high should we go in terms of getting that coverage? Because you assume on an average you get a 10 lakh cover, a floating cover for the family of another 5 lakh rupees, that you're okay.
But the thing is that, I mean, in case you take a 10 lakh cover, let's assume it costs you an X amount of money. It's not that if you go to 1 crore, it's going to cost you 10x. It's probably going to cost you only 2x. So, I mean, it's a very interesting pricing slope. So you're better off taking a higher cover, and you're not going to be substantially more out of pocket
So you're saying go as high as
as you
the
can,
as the company will allow you.
as the underwriter will allow you.
Okay.
Based on, and I think just go high.
Why should we get an insurance cover even if I'm getting health insurance from my office?
Simply because it may not be adequate. I mean, check the
Hmm.
cover, check the extent of cover. Mostly you'll have a family floater, not more than 20, 25 lakhs. I'm being very generous. It probably covers your parents, your spouse, and 2 children. It will not be adequate, especially in case a senior citizen has to be hospitalized or,
Hmm.
God forbid, they're diagnosed with a serious illness.
Hmm. I've also, found that the risk of relying only on your office cover is that is a job and it
Could
could
be
be
out of one.
gone tomorrow.
Yes.
And if you lose your job or you quit your job, then you're suddenly left with no cover at all, right? And then there's a gap
Yeah.
between jobs, if at all. And that gap then becomes risky.
Yep, absolutely.
Explain to me what the structures of health insurance payments are, because right now you go to a hospital and they'll tell you that, oh, this is the fix, this much you have to pay, this much the insurance company will pay. So there is, you can only choose these beds or you can only choose these kind of rooms. So what do those structures mean when you're buying a policy?
So every policy comes up with a bunch of features. So the feature you refer to first is something called a co-pay. When the
Yeah.
customer says that I'll pay 10%, 20%, 30% of the bill, the insurer will pay the remaining 70%. So, and you normally get a discount on the premium. So it's a choice people make to save some money at that point in time. Then you have the sum insured. Normally linked to the sum insured is a category of the room. It's a certain percentage of the sum insured. So suppose you have a 5 lakh cover, for example, you probably will get an allowance for a room for say 5,000
Hmm.
whereabouts, and anything in excess you have to cover. Mind you, also it's bizarre, but in hospitals in India, mostly, barring very few, based on the category of the room, the cost changes.
Yeah, of
Everything.
everything in every part of that treatment goes up based on the room that you're using.
Yes. So in case you're in a twin bed, and in case the cost of a patch test is 100 rupees, and mysteriously becomes 200 in case you're in a suite because the rate of a suite is double or whatever it is. It just proportionally goes up. I've never understood the logic ever. I mean, I've asked this question a few times. It only seems to come down to the simple fact that because the guy's in a suite, he can probably pay more. I mean, I can't think of any good reason why it should cost more. It's like just because you're earning more money, I should sell you a car more expensive than
Mm.
than somebody else. It doesn't make any sense at all. So again, coming back, so therefore it's linked to your sum insured. So again, you're better off taking a higher sum insured so that you're not constrained by this, and then you can take a room of your comfort and your choice. Your pre-existing conditions which are not covered earlier, they may take. I mean, IRDAs of course come up with now regulations wherein you have to cover them compulsorily after 36 months.
Mm.
So
There's
that
waiting period.
yeah, so there's a waiting
So,
period of 36
so
months.
the pre-existing, if I were to just take a minute to explain this, it means that I know I need a surgery, and so I go out and buy health insurance in order to cover that surgery. That is actually something you want to avoid. That's fraud.
Yes,
So
but
that
then
waiting period of 3 years effectively means that I'm not backwards planning the insurance policy that I'm buying. Is that
yes,
correct?
but it also caters to people who might have some medical conditions. I could have a pacemaker, I could have
Mm.
diabetes, I could have BP, I could recover from carcinoma, for instance. I might have pre-existing medical conditions. But there should be an opportunity. Even people with HIV, for example, can't be denied insurance in India. I think these regs are in that sense are great. And I think a lot of Indians, unfortunately, especially in urban India, after a certain age, most individuals have some
Some, yeah,
existing.
lifestyle diseases.
Yeah.
There is a criticism right now that senior citizens' health insurance premium is very high. They've been bumped up by nearly 50% for most senior citizens in the last couple of years. Why has that happened?
I think it's a question of experience insurers have had. I mean, in case the claim ratios are what they are, the prices will reflect that. Look, I think we have to understand at the end of the day that no insurance company wants to increase premiums because it just, you don't, I mean, if your pricing is not attractive, you're not going to sell. You're competing. There are over 30 insurers offering health. In fact, I include life insurers more than 40.
Hmm.
Uh, Nobody wants to not sell insurance. Also appreciate that over 90% of the premiums are paid out as claims at a portfolio level. So most insurance companies, it's not as if that they're taking a coercive approach and making a lot of money
Okay.
by overcharging customers. We can't, not in this environment, not when there are 35, 40 players, not when Indian customers are notoriously price sensitive. So it's just unfortunate. It's just the claims experience which makes one price it in a particular premium level.
There's also now questions about whether GST on health insurance should be reduced. We're currently at the 18% bracket, right? Which basically categorizes health insurance as a luxury item. Where do you stand on that argument? Do you believe that the GST should be brought down?
I think it should be. I think the government has to decide. Look, where's the upside? The upside, in my opinion, is that in case you make insurance more affordable, there's lesser burden on the government.
Yes.
In my opinion. So, I mean, in case instead of 118 rupees, in case uh, the customer has to pay 18,
Mm.
rather than not buy insurance at all, the government is better placed because, I mean, it just takes burden away. And the government, rather the private sector, do its bit to make sure that the country is insured and create rules, regs, play the role of a referee, call out companies in case they're not servicing the customers, so on and so forth. But I really believe it should be made as affordable and as cheap as possible. So I'm definitely not going to advocate for anything which makes it more expensive for any health customer, not just the senior citizen.
Mm.
The other thing we need to appreciate is that in case you make health attractive, you go to deepen the market. When you deepen the market, it has this cascading effect, a flywheel effect, when premiums keep on getting lower and lower because you start getting in customers who aren't opting for insurance. I mean, the customers, because it's not really a big deal because its premiums are low. Everyone buys it whether they are in good health or not. Today, there's some element of anti-selection, not very strong, but there is because I'm more likely to buy health insurance because I think that I might
I'm
be
going to get sick.
Yeah, that's how you don't have 18, 19-year-olds who buy insurance, right? You anyway think you're bulletproof, and you probably are bulletproof too.
But most 18, 19-year-olds, at least in urban India, aren't they covered in family policies?
They are. Look, I mean, the fact is, so are 35, 40-year-olds, so are 50-year-olds. But statistically, most people buy insurance after the age of 40.
After the age of 40. So tell me this now, post COVID, what is our penetration level? So effectively, among Indian families, how many of us have health insurance? Because let's consider family health policies, uh, group policies from our offices. I'm not counting what government is giving, but I mean actively that people have gone out and got policies. What's our coverage right now? Has COVID led to more people buying insurance policies?
So, what COVID has done is it made insurance the largest single category.
Okay.
But if you look at, general insurance as a percentage of GDP, it's about 1%.
Hmm.
If you look at health, which is the largest category, then you're talking about 0.3% of GDP. So that's the level of penetration. It's not much. But let me caveat this. The interesting thing is that be it crop or be it health, the premiums may not show you a very impressive number, but it's not a reflection of the number of people covered because premiums in India are cheap. Now, between 2011 and 2021, the population of India grew by approximately 10%. Approximately, there's no census, but approximately 10.5% is what the estimate is. But the number of new policies in the same period tripled.
Hmm.
But insurance as a percentage of GDP has more or less been stagnant. But which means the number of customers have gone up, but then the premiums are the same. But look at motor insurance, which most of your customers will be,
But that's
most of viewers.
compulsory. So
No, but
not
then you have
third party, you're saying.
not, but OD premiums, own damage premiums, mostly have stayed stagnant. It's been a decade since, in fact, some cases have come down. In crop, they have come down. In motor, they have come down. In term, they have come down. I mean, believe it or not, what I bought as a term policy in 2004, when I was 20 years younger, the premiums are more than they are for me today when I bought a fresh insurance policy. So just think about it. Just think about it. Look at the extent of change. I mean, again, telecom. Most of your viewers are probably born this century. But then if you remember, we used to pay 8 rupees for a minute.
Yes.
And today probably most people give up. The bill is less than $1,000, right? So penetration in that sense may not be indicative, but then I do believe a large number of more people are covered than premiums would indicate.
Do you feel that health insurers have got a bad reputation or bad reputation for delayed clearances or for denials that, these guys are not, they le lete insurance premium, but jab claim ka time hota hai, they don't pay. What is your response to that?
I think there's a lack of understanding on what the policy covers or does not cover. I think I think yes. I mean, there's an issue there. I mean, maybe the industry, the intermediaries can do a better job of not just telling the customer what the product has, but also but make it clear what it does not have. So you do have some bizarre situations wherein the person has scheduled a surgery, uh, and like the example you gave, when the person has taken the insurance a week prior and then complained saying that my insurance covered you. Arey boss, I mean, you can't do this because you just make. I mean,
So,
it's
so you're saying the enthusiastic agent who's selling the policy
part of the problem.
has not fully explained. So, okay, so tell
Not
me,
all of them,
yeah,
but I mean that could be part of the problem. The other is, if I talk about my company, I mean, we over 70% of the cashless claims are cleared within 1 hour. In fact, the
hmm,
regulators come up with a norm saying that you have to approve cashless claims within the hour.
okay,
Now, but then again, there, a lot of things are out of our control because they have to depend on the hospital to
to send you the bills.
send me the details at least so that I can approve cashless. Then in the first hour. So I'm dependent on other stakeholders in the system.
But this is cashless and if for a second, so cashless approval happens when you reach the hospital for
Yes,
admission,
yes.
which comes in an hour. But at the other end, at time of discharge, in many cases, it takes a day. The patient is waiting. The bills are going back and forth. The TPA has not responded. It can be quite frustrating. Why does it take that long?
It takes time simply because there's a gap between the hospital, the TPA, and the insurer. I mean, the hospitals in a lot of cases aren't able to explain the bills. I mean, and some of these come to me because I mean we have a matrix, and all organizations have it, wherein we have these bizarre claims which come up: 3-day hospitalization, 200 pairs of gloves, 43 syringes. I mean, any sensible insurer would ask those questions. Look, I mean, one has to understand this, that in case
Hmm.
we start approving these claims, and we could do that, it will get built into the pricing in the future. That's the customer is going to suffer.
What is the most bizarre claim that you've come across?
Bizarre claim I've come across was during COVID, wherein a person was being treated, and there was the person had to pay, had to wear a gown,
Hmm.
and we were billed for 33 gowns or something like that in 4 days. I mean that entire the robotic suit
PP.
like thing, the
Huh,
PPE.
huh.
So 33 of them of 4 days, and the person was in contact with doctors only on one day.
Hmm.
So it's humanly impossible for somebody to change the air 33 times in one day. I mean, let's assume the person worked all 24 hours. I mean, the person's probably taking more time going back, changing, and a very reputed hospital.
So, if in order to mitigate the problem of people buying insurance policies without fully understanding what the coverage is, if you were to tell us 3 questions that we should ask while buying health insurance, what would those 3 questions be?
I think first is that what's the cover that I can get? What's the maximum I can get? You should know that.
Okay.
You may decide not to buy it, but you should know what's the maximum you can get, and you should get quotations for higher sum insured. You definitely should, because
Hmm.
a lot of times you'll be surprised at how affordable it is to get a higher sum insured. Second question you should ask is what is not covered. Very important. And please use examples if you can and ask that question. What is not covered? I want to know what's not covered.
Hmm.
Ask that question. Um, the third thing, it will be useful for you to go to public disclosure and see the claim settlement ratios of the companies you are considering.
Explain to me how the claim settlement ratio works. What does it mean?
Look, it means basically the number of claims raised, as the denominator, the number of claims paid, in simple terms. But it's not a simple metric, and people have their own, I mean, there could be various interpretations. But I mean, if you go online, and I would encourage people to go to I mean, it's not advice that people like to hear from me, and I think I'm going to get killed for this. But if you go to a Reddit thread, for example, and ask that question, you'll get some very interesting answers. Probably negative about all companies, but you'll know which is the least unpopular.
Huh.
But there are ways. I mean, yes, I mean, we do notice that most people prefer speaking to an individual to buy a policy simply because health is complicated. They need some kind of hand holding. But please go online and check the reputation of the entity you're dealing with,
Hmm.
because I think a trend of anecdotal stories by itself tells you a larger story. It does.
Yeah.
So I think do that. The problem really is that the way disclosures are mentioned in terms of claim settlement, one may not be very clear because, for instance, I mean, it is number of claims settled divided by number of claims settled plus repudiated plus pending. In case I'm a fast growing company, that I'll always look bad because I'll always have more pending claims. In case, for example, in case I've slowed down, I might look prettier than I'm actually am. So that, but I mean, anecdotal stories do tell a story. I mean, we do the same thing for restaurant reviews, right?
Tell me what a TPA is, because we hear this a lot. You're getting a patient discharged, you've got the hospital to like finally release the bill, and they'll say TPA ko bheja hai. What does that mean?
So TPA is somebody who's an intermediary between the patient, or rather the hospital, and the insurer. They are the ones who verify the bill, check the validity, and they represent both the customer and the insurer. Basically, they are the medium. They are the pipe between both. So they check, they make sure the papers are in order, the bills seem right, and they approve it and they send it to the company. And I mean, they do diligence on behalf of the
This is
customer
like
and
a
company
third party
administrator.
administrator to just check all of the
Yeah, yeah.
paperwork. If we consider where our AQI is, generally speaking, in India, the level at which Delhi continues to function, which Mumbai is now entering, a dangerous space in that area. Over a period of time, as someone who's looking at health data and dealing with that sector, do you expect air pollution is going to send more people to hospital, is going to drive up bills? A lot of the population has not realized what this will mean financially.
So insurance companies do have pricing which are based on you could have zonal pricing, and let me explain that. So insurance companies cut their country into various zones: zone 1, zone 2, zone 3, zone 4. Based on the loss experience or the loss ratios, you price according to a zone a person is in, right? Now, it is true that some cities, including Delhi, have a pretty high loss ratio. So I suspect that, based on the claims outgo, that the premiums are already higher in Delhi compared to other zones, other cities might fall into. It's already been factored in. So, I mean, look, you can look at it anyway. You can look at it in terms of AQR, but then I think the biggest metric you look at is the historical claims. Historically, if people in Delhi, the average claim, I mean, the severity of the claim is much higher. You have two factors: frequency and severity. Frequency is number of claims per 100. Severity is the size of the claim. The severity in Delhi is consistently high for the insurer, then they will react to it and say that, for this zone, assuming Delhi is one zone for simple understanding, they will increase premiums. It may be attributed to pollution, may not be attributed to pollution, uh, but people will react to historical data.
So, what you're saying very diplomatically is that if pollution goes up and more people do go to hospital, whether it's Delhi or not, the insurance premiums will
It will go
increase
up, but it
for
will
that zone.
reflect. It will reflect for all insurance companies. It will. I mean, for example, Gujarat. I don't think Gujarat particularly has a pollution problem, but Gujarat usually for most insurance companies end up being uh, a pretty difficult market to operate in because the claim loss ratios are pretty heavy in Gujarat for most companies.
Why is that so?
So we link it back largely to practices by certain hospitals, but you'll find that Gujarat is a market which people find very difficult to operate in. So a lot of companies price Gujarat appropriately.
Because there might be more fraud on the hospital level.
Whatever be the reason. But I mean, for a minute, let's take the reason out of the
Okay.
equation. But then if there is anything which drives poorer claims experience, it will reflect in the premiums. Be it pollution, be it behavior, be it diet, be it lifestyle. So there are some places. Okay, let's get emotion out of it. Let's look at third party claims, for example.
Okay.
There's certain pin codes which have a higher loss ratio. There's certain pin codes which have a lower loss ratios. So companies prefer doing business, a certain volume of business in places where the driving behavior is better compared to some places.
I remember when I was tracking this sector many years ago, there was an experience that one insurer talked about in the UK. The UK had this study that came out that said that that women drivers result in fewer claims because they drive slower, they're more cautious. Whereas men are more confident drivers and they wind up hurting their cars far more because of their confidence. And so at that point, the UK insurers were giving women better premium rates because the claims were lower or fewer. Is there any data in India right now about?
So we don't have that data, but at the moment. But then, I think I had two views. I mean, I think that there's some people who say that, men are better drivers. There's some people
Mm.
who swear that women are better drivers. So I don't know. But I'll tell you what's very interesting. Areas which are poorer roads have lower accidents.
Because people are driving slower.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the number of deaths on highways ever since Nitin Gadkari has built these fantastic highways, they've just gone up because we just not used to good roads.
Yeah.
So uh,
And there's constantly someone crossing. There's
it's
the
just that
animals
we
crossing,
can't
cattle.
we
Yeah.
can't we can't handle it. I remember, I mean, and I have a confession to make. The first time I drove on the Bombay Pune Expressway years back, I went absolutely wild. I mean, I was like, wow,
Yeah.
there's a road ahead of me. So but yeah, but the same thing. I was looking at some data. The same thing happened in the U.S. too. After the Second World War, the number of accidents per million miles actually went up
Mm.
because the roads are so good. And then,
Mm.
in US, you have this great thing here, suburban family home,
Yeah.
two kids and then a car and the great outdoors.
Yeah.
And the number of accidents went up and then they declined. I think over a period of time, I think they will decline.
Mm.
So the reality is that it's an assumption you're making that AQI is leading to, in my opinion, it's an assumption that will lead to worse health outcomes for people in Delhi. There could be other mitigating factors. They could be. I'm not
Mm.
sure, but
Mm.
they could be. Uh, at the end of the day, what really matters is that, what are the claims ratio? What are the claims paid against premiums collected? And a lot of time we try to conveniently retrofit a logic.
Mm.
I don't think we should do that. So the idea is we don't know. But then from a practical standpoint, the companies will try and price it such that the losses are minimized. Because look, let's face it. I mean, there's other thing which your viewers should know that the industry doesn't make profit on underwriting basis. We make money only because of interest income. The fact is, claims plus commissions alone, leave alone allocated costs, are far in excess of the premiums collected.
Mm.
So I mean, there's an impression sometimes, people get from how it's perceived in the media, in some media, is that, insurance companies are being coercive. The fact is, we can't be coercive. We don't have that capability, or nor the intent for that matter.
So I do want to ask you this. Let's assume there's a person with high blood pressure who has bought an insurance policy and then goes on to have a heart attack. Will the heart attack be covered or will it be considered part of that pre existing illness?
Did he declare he had blood pressure?
Let's assume he did.
If he did, yes, it will. The heart attack will be covered. It will not be linked to the blood pressure because it's not necessary that is on account of blood pressure. There are a lot of other factors, contributing factors. However, if the treatment involves treating blood pressure in a more aggressive way, doing a hospitalization or a hospitalization, that bit, whatever it is, will not be paid because it's linked to the pre-existing condition. But the important thing here, Faye, is that the patient declare that they have pre-existing conditions. I think a lot of people are fearful that in case they declare their habits, whether they smoke, whether they drink, whether what their real weight is, or if they have pre-existing condition, they'll be denied a policy. I think they're just being overly fearful,
Hmm.
honestly. And the downside of not declaring is far more than their upside of saving a few $1,000 every year. Because finally, if your claim's not going to get settled, it's not worth buying it at all at whatever
So,
price.
so let me rephrase this. You're saying that when we buy our insurance policy and it asks us, do you smoke? How many cigarettes per day? Do you drink? How many drinks per week? Do you have any? Do you abuse any substance? I think these are the questions that are asked.
Yeah.
And a lot of times people don't declare that they smoke. But if it turns out later that you have lied on that question, your claim could be denied.
Could be
Correct?
denied, of course. Because look, I have the right to underwrite a policy at that point when the customer is asking for a product. Underwrite with the right pricing or the appropriate pricing as I deem fit or the insurer deems fit. Now, you're not being completely transparent. Insurance is a contract of utmost good faith, as they call it. So, one needs to be completely transparent. The insurer needs to be transparent. The insured needs to be transparent.
And who's going to enforce that the insurer is going to be transparent?
I think there's a regulator we have. I mean, and the fact is that I think the system has enough checks and balances. And finally, the biggest check and balance is the fact that you have a large number of insurers who provide products. Customers always have a choice. It's not a monopoly. It's not a duopoly. It's not an oligopoly. I mean, you have a lot of players who sell bunch of products. And the customer can choose some other player for the coverage, for the service, for the network, for the way they deal with claims. Um, I don't, and like I mentioned to you, statistically, the loss ratios are almost as much as the premium in
Yeah.
the case of health. So,
So, if I've understood this correctly, every single insurance policy is an individual contract between the person who's bought the policy and the company
yep,
based on what you have declared in the form. So, if you have lied on your form, it can be considered a violation of that contract, and you are no longer, the insurer is no longer obligated to pay. Correct?
absolutely, because there's lack of openness.
Hmm.
So you have not declared, you have not made a true and fair declaration. So the contract is null and void in that sense.
I also noticed that you have a woman's health insurance policy. What does that entail? Why is that different?
So that was an insight-based product. I mean, when we did research, we discovered that in a lot of cases, almost in all cases, the woman is an add-on to a man's policy. So we noticed two things. Very few women buy policies for themselves. Even if, they're financially independent and they're in senior positions, they don't. They normally are a tag along on the family policy. Now, what happens is that when a man buys a policy, he chooses the policy which is best for him.
Hmm.
And then you have add-ons,
Hmm.
the children and the wife. Now, Power, which is what our product is called, POWHER. In this product, we put the woman at the center of it. It's not that a man can't buy it, but it covers, things like infertility treatment, women-specific cancers, reproductive health, so on and so forth, which other policies may not cover. Look,
Hmm.
the fact is, all products are cater to man,
Hmm.
cater to the man. I mean, and the woman is an afterthought, really. And that's why in over 95% of the cases, the man is the proposer. And then you have the other
Hmm.
people at it.
And how many of these women policies have you sold?
So we're doing okay. And the first month was pretty massive. We sold, I think, if I remember right, about 4,000. And then we're doing well. It's a significant part of our portfolio. I think it's a policy which I expect it to do well over a period of time, not immediately. And I'll explain why. Because given the range of the cover this policy offers, it's more expensive than a traditional policy. I think a lot of people are making that classic mistake of buying a policy which is affordable than what is relevant.
Necessary, yeah.
Then what is relevant? I'll give you another example. We are the only ones who have same-sex couple insurance products, right? I mean, so a same-sex couple can buy insurance product under definition of family. It didn't really pick up in the beginning, but then now, I mean, it's slowly gaining traction. So some of these things have a hockey stick, but
Right.
I think these are the right products to get out
Hmm.
into the market, and it'll take its time. It'll take its time.
You have a dog health insurance policy. What does it do? How does it work?
It works like a health insurance policy does for a human being. There's absolutely no difference.
Okay. And what does it cost to buy?
Depends on the age, depends on the breed, but starting at as little as about 5,000 rupees for a 5 lakh cover, going up to say about 20,000 rupees. Again,
Hmm.
based on the age and the breed.
Okay. And have you sold enough to be able to see data of, people claiming and how they're using the policy?
Yeah, we have. I mean, we've had this product for more than 2 years, almost 3 years now. And the interesting thing is that people don't really claim as often as they could,
Hmm.
but it helps us keep the prices lower.
The other big category of general insurance that people don't use as much as they should is home insurance. And a lot of times people will be like, oh, I'm going to have to show bills of everything, or you feel that you only have to buy home insurance if you own the home. And I remember at one point the penetration was less than 1%. What is it right now?
It's still probably that or lower. Um, Again, I mean, we got to account for tail events. Now, in 2019, a morning of 14th August, my house burned down. And it's a true story. I mean, I had the check in the drawer and I had not included a couple of air conditioners in the list. So I told my EA that, look, I'll do it in a couple of days. So it was just there. So I was between policies.
Ooh.
House burned down in that period. And then, we are moved to a different house. We had to get work done. And then had to look for alternate digs and accommodation. Then COVID happened, and then work had to stop. The entire thing. I think it's a very, very important cover. I can say that as a customer. I mean, as a potential. I mean, I am a customer otherwise, but then when I needed it, I didn't have it, unfortunately. Uh, in fact, there's law which says that housing societies must have structure insurance, and most of them don't. The law is not implemented. Even TP, half the vehicles in India don't have third party cover,
Mm.
right? It's a law followed more in breach. So I think it's an important product, honestly. And even contents for that matter, I think, and again, it doesn't cost much. I mean, for a typical 3 BHK in Bombay, put all the contents together, it'll be less than 15,000 a year.
I want to ask you about a completely different thing right now, which is some of the policies that you're using internally within the company. I understand that your company has been rated among the great places to work
Yeah, for 6 years in a row.
for 6 years in a row. And given everything we now know about work-life balance and people being asked to work on Sundays, is that something you take into consideration while being a great place to work? What is the a lot of younger people now want better work-life balance. How are you able to navigate that?
See, in my opinion, work life is deeply personal. I mean, I'm not going to prescribe to anyone what balance. What's balance for me may even my idea of balance has changed over time. I mean,
Mm,
when I was younger, I would work 7 days a week, 16 hours a day. I mean, I don't do it anymore because my idea of balance has changed. As far as we are concerned, we don't prescribe that people come to office every day. As long as they get the work done, I really don't care where they work from a coffee shop, from their homes, from office, or wherever they want. They're supposed to show up on days which are important. We still have a lot of people who operate remotely. For instance, my CFO operated remotely for almost 3 years. I mean, my own reporting. I think it's a great example for the organization that you
mm.
have a CXO, a very important role. We have two actuaries in the company. One of the actuaries is still based out of Delhi, for instance. So it's at a very senior level. So which actually gives a message to other people that if it's required, then yes. I mean, as long as you get work done, you please make sure that you're comfortable. I think the idea is to give people an opportunity to fulfill their personal and professional goals both. Now, what we can do is give people an equality of opportunity, not an equality of outcome.
Mm.
Now, I can't fix your personal life. I can't make sure that you professionally grow. But then what we try and do is that give people that opportunity.
You've also done a lot of work in diversity and inclusion. I found some of the efforts especially in including disabled people into the workforce, has been admirable. 1% of your total workforce.
Correct.
Tell me what you've done internally so far. Why is this important?
Look, I think fundamentally we need to understand that, uh, being a business or running a business is a privilege. I mean, let's face it. And secondly, in case you're in a position, I mean, be it you as a journalist or be it a celebrity, be it an actor, be it a cricketer, a public figure, you have the ability to not just shape opinion, but to actively do good, right? I think as an organization, we have the responsibility. Um, the fact is, a lot of organizations don't really represent the communities fully,
Hmm.
right? I mean, uh, the disabled are over 1% of India's population, but they are not by any stretch of imagination 1% of the workforce. Of course, the government does offer quotas to the differently able. The private sector really doesn't. We started with about 3 employees in 2021, 2022, and it was a very hard climb because we were not ready. I mean, somebody who's disabled, how do we make sure that the person is fulfilled at the workplace? I mean,
Yeah.
because I just want to get somebody in and say that no, I just want you in my
Yeah.
company.
It's not just about saying, hey, we hired someone,
You want to make
but making sure you're creating an environment where that person can
be
thrive.
productive. Yeah,
Yeah. and
absolutely.
and grow and feel valued and feel challenged, intellectually, to perform on a daily basis. So what have you done to create that environment?
So one is obviously recognition that that you have the ability to make a difference. So can you use that ability? The other, making sure something happens is hard work. I mean, there you
Mm.
will have to really run it like a mandate or like a KPI and tell the leadership team that your performance rating depends on how well you drive this. I mean, there's no kind way to do this. I mean, sometimes compassion and kindness have to be thrust down people's
Huh.
throats. Honestly, I mean, but I think over a period of time, once it's socialized, I think people see value in it.
So when I was doing some research on this area, so there's one thing is just hiring people of diversity, which means gender, it means people from the LGBTQI community, people with disability, people from different castes. You bring them into your organization. You make specific to disability. You have to physically make your organization accessible to wheelchairs, to people who are visually impaired. And then I found it very interesting that another burden is the education, where when you have someone with a disability or you have someone from a marginalized community, you have colleagues and employees who then start asking questions about, so what does it mean when you say you're transgender? And the burden of that education then falls on this individual. And there's an emotional sort of heavy lifting that needs to be done, by you're explaining to each person what your existence is. And apparently, and getting them also to socialize, which is, if employees are going out for drinks at the end of the day, or they're hanging out, or they're inviting each other home, for this individual to also be included. And is there a role then for the organization to play to make sure that also happens?
Absolutely. We spend about over a week every year doing company-wide events on this, educating
Okay.
people. Happy to say that yes, we have people from the LGBTQI community, the differently able, people who are transgender. Interestingly, 22% of the people are differently able or people with disabilities are women. So
Hmm.
we've tried to make it as diverse as possible. The people are productive. I mean, and when I speak to the CXOs today, they tell me that I mean, you to realize that the person would have anyway landed the job, and the person wasn't being evaluated just because it didn't come in through the funnel, which
Huh.
normally only has the people who are not differently able. Unfortunately, that's the issue. So I think it's about continuous sensitization, and I think, look, we've done the hard work. I mean, we've got to critical mass. Now I think the idea is well socialized. I think it's going to be easier from here.
Hmm.
To me, a triumph really would be that maybe 5 years later, somebody in the senior leadership team or the CXOs or a business head or a regional head is actually from
A
the
member of this community.
area.
Yeah.
That then would have really made sure the person has been able to grow and thrive. And then interestingly, we had this one guy, Prakash, who used to work in the pantry, and he finished law, can't speak English. We just took him in the legal team in the company. He's on a steep learning curve, but then very proud of what he's done. I mean, the guy would go back home, study in the local language, cleared his examinations with distinction, and now he's a regular full-time employee of the company. We're very
Hmm.
proud.
Hmm.
We had other office boy in Bangalore who's now a part of the operations team. So there are a lot of good stories, and we celebrate it. I mean, the fact is that supervisors do get recognized; they do get rewarded for demonstrating these behaviors. I think that's important. But you have to do both. You also have to somewhere thrust compassion down. I think it doesn't come easily. The problem is that we sit in a room, we order a couple of drinks, and then we say that, hey, you should do something for people. I think typically you're a traffic signal, and then you're tweeting furiously saying that the kid's dying in Gaza, and there's a poor girl outside your window selling you flowers.
Yeah.
And there's something you can do about it then and there, but you won't.
Hmm.
I mean, it's easy being a keyboard warrior. I'm sorry, I'm probably going on a bit too long, but Shrikant Bhola said this at the event. He said that a lot of people have sympathy. He says there's a lot of sympathy. People know what is the right thing to do. He said, but very few people act on it.
Hmm.
He said, what people have to move from sympathy to real empathy, which leads to action. And I think that's what we've been able to successfully do. I mean, of course, Shrikant put it very elegantly. I didn't think of it that way. I was looking at more in terms of execution there.
Hmm.
But I think now we are there.
So you did say, of course, when you hire someone, you realize this person was always well suited for the job, but they were just not in the funnel. So, and is have you encountered while you were enforcing this or implementing this, that there is an unconscious bias in hiring? It might not be like, oh, I'm only going to hire able-bodied men from this certain category, but is there, without thinking, does the system wind up, unless you tell it otherwise, to do things a certain way?
Yes, it does. And that's why it was important. So we did have a lot of people from the community. I mean, who came in for a lot of events and spoke about their struggles. And they were all accomplished individuals. I mean, for example, we had Avani Lekha and we had Rana Lugapati. We had Arunava Sinha who would come and spoken to our employees. And I mean, my absolute favorite person is Arunava Sinha. I mean, I was really inspired by her. Sudha Chandran, for example. A lot of these people have come in and actually contributed greatly to everyone's understanding, including my own, of what people who are different people with disabilities can do. It requires a lot of education. It requires a lot of conscious effort. It also requires to make sure that people sit down and listen to them when they're speaking. A lot of times, because people just say that kal ye hone wala hai, that maybe you can just take it easy. No, you have to make sure that people turn up. They are there. It's compulsory. Attendance is compulsory. You might work from home, 20 days or 30 days a month. For this event, you bloody well turn up and listen to what people have to say. So, I I'm probably going over the top, but then I don't think there's an easy way to do it.
Yeah. Do you think also, you did say that sometimes compassion has to be thrust upon people?
Yeah.
I know that the government has rules about what the government now calls Divyang, which is people with disability representation in public sector.
Yes.
Uh, should that be enforced in a stronger way in private sector as well, in your opinion?
I'm generally don't like prescriptions of this nature. I generally don't. I'm not in favor of anyone prescribing what needs to be done. Uh, Look, my point is that organizations and I've said this to people. I have no empirical evidence, but I do believe that organizations which have representatives from different communities provide better outcomes and solutions. I mean, the fact is that in case I have people with diverse backgrounds and religious views and political views and beliefs and values get together in a room, I think we come up with a far better product. Number one. Number two, I think that you probably serve your customers better in case you do that. That culture leads to better outcomes for customers, and that's a competitive advantage, right? I mean, especially for our industry, wherein we are selling a promise. I mean, the way we deliver that promise with empathy, with compassion, quickly. Uh, I think this has a bearing on that as well. I do believe that our NPS scores are Western class for the industry simply because we do these things. But again, I have no empirical way of establishing it. It's a belief that I have.
You worked on a book called Wonderful World, right?
Yes.
From Future Generali. Tell us about that book.
It's a wonderful world. It's a play on the word, or rather on the digit one. 1% of our employees are today differently able. It's a milestone we have met. So it's a celebration. It's basically, the book is just a celebration of what we have done. We're also hoping it acts as a handbook for organizations who might want to emulate this. I'll be very grateful and happy. And in case it acts as a blueprint for other organizations.
So, what would you like the audience to take away from the book?
Look, I mean, I think we give a blueprint. And I think what will jump at you really is that when you talk about empathy, you're doing the right thing. And I'm not just referring to this. You talk about, I think a lot of that gets stuck at intent. A lot of us believe that as long as you have good intent, things will fall in place. Intent is important. Obviously, it is important. But I think a lot of people realize that it's a lot of hard work. It's a lot of monitoring. It's a lot of effort. It's a lot of danda. It's a lot of, I mean, as you spoke, thrusting compassion down people's throats. It's a lot of that. It requires a lot of tenacity, a lot of stamina, and I would imagine any company will take 3 to 5 years to actually see the results of this. So, if as a manager or as a CEO, you're going to start doing this today, I think you've got to wait till 2028, 2030 to see the results of it. But the journey is absolutely worth it.
Anup, thank you so much for spending time with me today and answering all of our questions very patiently. Thank you.